All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today. Nothing is into your head. I hope you don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to episode 187 of the KissFAQ Podcast. I am your host, Julian Gill, admin on the KissFAQ message board, and we have a special guest joining me today, because I'm not going to speak in third person, because I'm the only one of the team who's here. But after 164 episodes, making his return, the magic is back. Ross Radley. Ross, it's good to see you again.
Great to see you, Julian. How you doing?
I was just looking back through our episode guide, and you were originally on episode, I think it was 23, in June of 2015. So that's a bloody long time ago when you think about the path that your book has taken in 3 years. For people who've been living under a rock, who don't know who you are, who don't remember who you are, amnesia may have sunk in, why don't you just introduce yourself to everyone and tell them what you are working on and have been working on?
Okay. Hi, everyone that doesn't already know. I'm Ross Radley, and I'm working on a book called Magic, Kiss Chronicles, 1973 to 1983. It's basically a timeline of those 10 or 11 and a half years, or 10 and a half, whatever it is, including stuff leading up to 73. Day by day, everything that I could find is detailed. Of course, every concert, every interview, every photo session, recording session, band meeting, when they went to Hawaii on vacation, when they're lunching at Spago's in 1978. All those details are covered with photos that will give you the visual along with the info. And that, to boil it down, is the goal of the book, to cover those years in detail and give you both, not just the information, but the photos along with it.
Have you also got arrest records and hospital details for some of those that we know took place during that time span? Maybe it's better to plead the fifth on that, eh?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep that secret for the book. There's a lot of detail, though. So many things that, there's been a lot of KISS books and a lot of information already out there, but there's a lot that's been dug up. And to be fair, 10 years from now, I'm sure there'll be a lot more dug up from somebody else or myself, down the line. It's just seems to be an endless well of information just in those 10 years. It's really remarkable how much went down and how busy those knuckleheads were.
How little they actually do remember, regardless of those who didn't use any illicit substances. Their memories are not good because they were busy living it. What you're going to be doing is you're like the Sherlock Holmes of the KISS world. You're putting all these threads back together. You're reconstructing the crime, aren't you?
That's a good way to put it, for sure. Yeah, they remember it differently depending on when they're asked. And give you just an example of the meeting of Gene and Paul at Stephen Cornell's apartment. Depending on where you read that story, either Paul showed up and Gene was already there, or that can be reversed depending on which version of what publication you read it in. Or, I just read recently this other interview where Paul was saying that Paul had a band up in upstate New York that Stephen was playing in, which of course we know it was Gene that had the band up there. But I just think they're not concerned with being historians when they tell the story. So whatever version of the information they have on hand is what shows up right then. I think maybe you'd get a little bit more detail and accuracy if I get the chance to sit down with them and go, okay, let's really think this through and get the most accurate information as possible, for posterity. And but that's not what they're doing when they're given just a regular interview. They're just talking off the top of their head. And Gene, though he did not do any drugs, he bless his heart, he has the hardest time getting it right. He's wrong more than he's right about his own history. I can't speak to how accurate he is about comic books or horror movies. He seems to know a lot, but because I don't know, I can't check his info. But whenever he's talking about Kiss details, he won't just be off by a couple of days. He'll miss it by a whole year. And, if you flagged him down on it, he probably would go, oh, well, that's close enough or something. But for guys like me, I want the exact detail if possible.
So, kids, remember, one hash brownie can mess up your memory for life. Just one. 3 years ago, you were about to, I can't remember where we were in the process for you, whether you had started your Kickstarter or whether you were about to start your Kickstarter at the time. So let's take everyone back 3 years ago, because what happened at the time that has left us with no magic for 3 years? The world has been a worse place for those 3 years, not having all the magic that we should have in our lives. And it's all your fault, Ross. So explain to everyone what happened that made you basically put the brakes on and step back, and if that is even accurate description of what occurred.
Well, the brakes weren't on, but step back sort of was, in terms of not feeling like I had to hurry up and get it out. The Kickstarter started at the beginning of June 2015. I can't recall, honestly, whether our interview was once it started or after. I can't recall. But it was probably really close. I think you were probably the first interview that I did for it. But it's hard to remember. I didn't check that. But once the Kickstarter started, and it did really well, but it didn't do well enough to get the goal, which was $100,000. Well, then, with the way Kickstarter works, you don't get any of the money that you raise. I raised about $46,000 in a month, which by most people's standards is a lot of money in a short amount of time. So I felt very encouraged by that. But again, I couldn't use any of that money because I need $100,000 to do a book like this. It's a big project, 500 plus pages with, photos that need to be licensed. For the most part, obviously there are some non-professional photographers who are happy just to have their photo in a Kiss book. But for the most part, the photographers need to get paid, and I want to pay them. They deserve to be paid. So that takes a lot of money. So $100,000 budget, is what was required. Once it didn't make it, I decided, instead of feeling any pressure to hurry things along and take what I had and finish the book, I decided to see what would happen and take my time. What happened immediately was a floodgate kind of situation where, because of the exposure of the book on social media, people came to me saying, hey, look, I took these pictures, would love to have them, and you can use them for your book, which was fantastic. And so a lot of really rare stuff showed up. I spent time contacting more people, doing more interviews, talking to more photographers. And just to give one example of why the extra time was worth it, there's a photographer lady named Rayanne Rubenstein that most Kiss fans probably don't recognize that name. They've heard Finn Costello and Barry Levine, but they don't know Rayanne Rubenstein. And she was there photographing them on what I consider to be their first official photo session. The Joel Brodsky photo session for the first album cover happened before her photo session. But that photo session with Joel Brodsky was just, there's no costumes. They're not really posing other than moving their head around in different places. They're stuck under that blanket or whatever. So I don't consider that like a full-on photo session. Well, she took the red background photo sessions, which are full-on with costumes and smoke and individual sessions for each guy, plus changes of makeup and slight changes of costume as well. Gene's makeup changed 3 times. Paul, of course, changed from the Bandit to the Star. Did photo sessions for both of those with the same photographer on the same day. And Peter changed his makeup 3 times. And Ace, of course, he couldn't be bothered.
he brought the dagger, right?
Yeah, he was carrying that extra load that day. So anyway, she did that photo session, and I had been in contact with her for almost 4 years already, trying my hardest to get her to let me see what she had in her archives. One thing after another, life, everybody's busy, and she could only show me a small sample. I knew she had a bunch more, and I wanted to see what she had. So I kept waiting and talking and planning. And finally, I had to drive to Nashville. This was back in October of last year, 2017. I had to drive to Nashville so that I could, in person, see the actual negatives and the proof sheets that she had on file. So it was well worth it. When you guys see what she has that no one's ever seen before, that's never been printed, it's just going to be so worth the wait, I can promise you. So that was just one example of just being a little more patient and having it pay off in terms of the goodies that were found for the book. Not just in photos, but also in information.
One thing I do want to ask you about, someone like Rayanne obviously was there for what is essentially the very first photo shoot, as you say, and people will have seen many shots from the Red Room over the years, but that's probably a very, very small percentage of the actual ones that she took that day. I'm curious about when you approach a photographer like this for your project, do you essentially interview them to find out the context of how they came into working with the band? And I think what a lot of people may be interested in as well is what sort of gear they were using. Did you ever try and get any of that sort of detail from these people, and how did you approach them in order to gain their trust? Because that's got to be a massive thing for a photographer, because that stuff is their kids. That's their goal. That's their life. That's their career. To us, it's just a photo. To them, it's something else entirely in most cases.
You hit it so right on the head, Julian. Photographers are an interesting breed, and dealing with them is not easy usually. There are exceptions, but for the most part, it's especially coming from my point of view, which is, first of all, they don't know me from Adam. I'm just some guy, asking them for something. I don't have money to hand them first. If I was independently wealthy and I go, look, I'm working on this project, here's $1,000 to pay you to look through your archives for me, that would make a difference. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of money to give to a photographer, especially this many different photographers, just to have them look for what they have in their archives and present it to me. So
and let me just make the point for you there that there are photographers who will not talk to you unless you pay them to look through their archives. So I've run into them, and it's always, I've just shrugged my shoulders and say, well, that's just business. When they reach a level where they could say, unless you pay me, I'm not even going to do the research. So forget it. I've got, a billion photos. It's time. Time is money.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Many of them can be that way, and sometimes they won't even respond to your either email or voicemail or any other communication with them, because you're not represented by a publisher. You're not anyone that they recognize, and a lot of times that's just not worth their hassle, because I could be just some goofy fan just trying to get something from them and wasting their time. So I understand completely why it would be tough, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease is what I always heard growing up, and I tried to be as squeaky as I could without being a pest and cutting the ties to them. And I eventually developed relationships with these photographers over time, building their trust to the point where, like when I went to Nashville to look at Rayanne's photos, I actually slept in the studio that she has there. The studio she has is a huge, like a warehouse, okay? And it's got filing cabinets from one side to the other, full of photos, not just obviously Kiss photos, but she photographed the Doors, the Who, everybody and anybody you can think of, Muhammad Ali. I mean, she was there and photographed lots of really famous people, and all of those images are in those files. And here shows up a guy that she meets for the first time, right? I had talked to her on the phone for 4 years, but that's not the same as meeting in person. And again, she doesn't really know me in terms of, can I trust this guy around my stuff? But she did. I developed a trust with her and a relationship with her. And she was nice enough to allow me not only into the studio, but she had a pull-down bed that I slept on for about 2 hours, because while I was there, once I found the material, once I found the negatives, I had brought my scanner, brought my computer, and I went to work scanning the photos, because she absolutely did not want to let them out of that studio, right?
So she's one of those photographers who has not digitized her archive, and she's got
Right.
50 years worth of work, which
Yes.
it would probably be an absolutely impossible task for someone to do on their own now. So you had to, did she have it organized in a way that it was easy to find, or was it a search? And when you got into, say, the KISS folder, was it all kind of together, or was it all over the place? I mean, was it a filing system known only to her?
It was a filing system. However, when I walked into the studio, the first thing I see is folders lying everywhere. It was like a flashback to my visit to Neil Preston's house back in 2013, I think it was, when I visited him in California. And I walked into his studio, and there's stuff laying everywhere. Stuff meaning sleeves of slides, negatives, prints, just folders just lying on the floor everywhere. And that tells me immediately that even if he has some of it organized, there's a huge bunch of it somewhere in this room underneath something that, we'd have to spend days trying to find it and organizing it. Well, that was what happened when I walked into Ray Ann's studio. I see this big workbench, and there's just stuff, photos and negatives and slides tossed around everywhere. I see all the filing cabinets, which gave me, encouragement that, well, maybe they're organized in there. And some of them were. However, some of the ones that were on, she had a printout sheet, a big thick stack of printed out sheets with the name of the artist and a code number and the filing cabinet that it was supposed to be in. Well, as it turns out, it wasn't always in that particular filing cabinet, and some of the stuff wasn't in any filing cabinet. So there are things that were supposed to be there that she was surprised to find that they weren't. And, I can't express my frustration, and get angry or anything, but that's just the way, unfortunately, it happens to be. It's just so much material, again, not just for KISS, but for all these other people that she's photographed. And that's kind of the way it is for photographers. I assume it's got to be a different situation now, especially with digitized photos being able to be organized on a computer, and they're already digitized, so you could, you can share them with whoever's interested in it. But for the photographers in the 70s, the majority of them are not really organized with their material. They have some stuff done because it's already been paid for, meaning people have already contacted them and said, I need these photos, and and here's the money for the photos. And so they already have done the work on that. But the other stuff is still sitting there in its raw form in a folder, maybe where it's supposed to be, maybe complete, maybe not. It's just one of those things. So getting the trust with the photographers, being there in person to help find the actual raw materials, actually doing the scanning myself to make sure that they were scanned correctly. A lot of times, if they are scanned either by a company or by an individual who's not experienced with scanning, they'll crop, they'll do like an auto crop on the scanner, and it cuts off part of the picture. It doesn't recognize as valuable. So, for example, there might be a live shot where there's a lot of black on the side that looks like it doesn't need, it's not important, but just past that dark area is a guitar sitting on a stand in the corner that you've never seen them play before. Little details like that. I tried to explain to photographers. I go, I'm looking for details, that are probably insignificant to most people, but if I can see, good qualities and I can see the detail, it'll help me a lot. So that was another obstacle to overcome with them, because most of them just want to show you their the clearest, best lit photo of Gene at the microphone, or Gene taking up the whole screen. Just that for them is
the money shots, basically.
The money shots, yeah, the ones that most publications would go, oh yeah, we're going to choose that close up, right? And those are the least interesting to me, because obviously we've seen a gazillion of those. So I'd rather see a distant shot that shows you more of the environment. And a lot of photographers just simply aren't interested in even bothering with those kind of photos because they don't think they're valuable. So that was another obstacle I had to overcome and convince them to, allow me to see this material so I could use it for the book and learn from it. Which I got to say, because I was patient and persistent, I was able to get a lot of good stuff that way.
So in terms of the past 3 years and the work that you've done, tracking down additional photographers, going through additional material, when it comes to the book itself, you had to get some help, didn't you? In terms of layouts and on the technical side. Tell us about what that has entailed for you over the past 3 years in terms of working on the layouts, designing how you want the finished product to look for everyone to see. Great
question. Originally, I had planned I would do it myself if no one came along that would that I could work with. There were like Niels Breck Zinfin. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name correct.
You just butchered it.
What? I did?
I butcher it every time. Svensson, I believe. But Nils is a great guy, so he won't hold a grudge and get out his Viking axe on you.
Yeah, no, he's a sweetheart too, and he helped me at the very beginning with a couple of initial designs. When he had time to, and originally he was possibly going to help me with the design. And I don't know that he ended up having enough time available to do it. But near the end of the Kickstarter campaign, Scott Davis showed up and said, "Look, I'm excited to do this project with you if you will let me. I've been a Kiss fan. This is exactly the kind of thing I have a passion for. I have the skills to do it. I can use InDesign. I've been designing stuff for Bose for years," and I was like, sounds great. And so over the course of basically 2 days, I sent him some text and photos, and he whipped up what I consider just magic right away, because he and I are so similar in our taste in what we want to see and what should be done, that it was just the perfect fit, really. Rarely, if ever, do I even have to say, okay, we need to change this or that, because what he initially wants to see is right in line with what I would want to see myself. So, I present to him the raw materials of text and photos, and I might give him, a couple of notes ahead of time that, we're gonna focus on this main photo, and then you have details on these. But the way it's put together is just, his instinct and passion for Kiss and the way he would like to see it. And it just so wonderful that it worked out. That's exactly the way that I would have done it myself. So it's just like a match made in heaven. He's incredible. We have such great compatibility in terms of our sense of humor, which is super important. We love the same music, all kinds of different stuff we can talk about for music, not just Kiss, but all kinds of different styles. We grew up around the same time frame, so we share a lot of things in common and get along super well. And I just lucked out big time for him to show up and want to jump on board with this project.
Because InDesign is not a package that you can just buy off the shelf and use. It is a bitch I mean, it is there is no other way to describe it. Until you get familiar with it, until you've gone on courses for it, it
Yeah.
essentially is unusable. It is not something that you are going to be clicking on those help bubbles, loading things up and getting to grips with. It is something that it is a tool that you actually need to learn how to use properly to leverage. So getting someone in who already knows how to use it, is just of critical importance. I mean, I have thought about using it, and then I saw how much actually goes into it, and I said, forget it. I'm sticking with Word. I'm just going to write shit. I'm not going to design. Forget it. There's other people for that.
Well, I had done some digital editing in the past. I had worked in. I knew my way around Photoshop and other digital editing software. And maybe for people who don't already know that, who are new to who I am, the cover of Rolling Stone that has Kiss on the cover was a restoration of a poster that I put together. The individual pieces had to be scanned and then put together digitally, and then cleaned up the poster to get rid of all the fold lines and all the scratches. And I did a little, what I think was a good color correction for it. And
I think Rolling Stone agreed with you because they did use it. So I think you did an adequate job on that, Ross.
Thank you. I was, I've said this before. I was so surprised and excited to see that. Of course, Rolling Stone didn't have any idea that I did that. They got that photo from Finn Costello, who got it from me. Back when I was working with Ken Sharp on the Nothing to Lose book, I was doing photo editing for that book as well, including the cover of that book. So that's just another little thing that I've done. When we were working on that book, we were sending photos to Finn Costello because he didn't already have a lot of his stuff. Surprisingly, he didn't have a lot of his Kiss photos. So things that I had found and digitally restored, I sent to him. And Rolling Stone must have contacted him directly as opposed to licensing something from Getty Images. And then because they gave him the credit and they didn't say, Getty Images or any other of those photo agencies. So I think they just directly contacted Finn and he sent it. So I don't think he told them at all that he got that from me. He probably doesn't even remember that he got it from me, which was, is no big deal. But I know for sure that it's my work because I can zoom in and see the mistakes because I actually did that before I knew too much about photo editing. And there was a lot that I should have cleaned up that didn't get cleaned up. But you can't tell when you're looking at it, as a regular picture. It's only if you zoom in really close to the pixels you can see that kind of stuff. So anyway, I had some experience with photo editing and Photoshop, so I understood how to make layers and do things like that, and borders and drop shadows and various fonts and fading and all these different tools that you use in that kind of software. And so my attitude is, if somebody didn't show up, I was just going to, do a crash course as much as I could on InDesign and just learn. I don't know. Maybe people think it's silly, but I just felt like, I want to do it, so I would do it and learn how to use InDesign and, design the material myself if it had to be that way. But when Scotty showed up, I was just over the moon how well we worked together and how instinctively he could put together the right look. And that's been consistent this whole time. So I think we're a great team. And as a shout out to my brother, Scotty Davis, I love you.
Yeah, because it wasn't. It was soon after the original announcement in 2015 that you did start sharing sample pages. I remember vividly the Paul Lynde spread is one of the earliest ones that you shared, and since then you've shared quite a few over the past 3 years. Teasers of material, whether it's actual photographic. You've put to bed some photographic debates that have appeared on Facebook and on the FAQ message board, obviously, put people in their place with your evidence and your rationale, which just gives a nice taste of where you're coming from in terms of the photographs that you're going to be including, or some of the things that you're obviously very well keyed in on. In January of this year, you attended the Atlanta Kiss Expo that featured Vinnie Vincent, and you and Scott had a table set up, didn't you? And you did, quite a bit of promo stuff, which I still have because it was my ugly mug sitting right across from you guys. So, what made you feel that 2018 is the time to bring all of these threads, all of these things that have been kind of hanging for the past 3 years together and make, I guess, the final push for the project? Why now?
There's back in 2015, after the Kickstarter was over, there was again the floodgates of opening had opened, and I was really busy scanning a lot of slides and negatives from photographers who either didn't have the time to scan it themselves, or sometimes they didn't even have the equipment to do it. So that was another thing where I would build up the trust with some of these photographers to where they would actually ship me their raw materials, and I would be holding, this, what I consider to be, precious gems in my hand, and I was responsible for actually scanning them, and a lot of times, digitally editing, because a lot of the times the old slides and negatives are really, really scratched up and damaged in ways that if they're going to be used, you're going to have to put some work into it. So that's what I did a lot in 2016, the end of 2015 and 2016. I was a scanning full and digital editing full. So I kept that stuff going. 2017, it was still that way, but less so. So I started building more of the book that way. And by the time we got to 2018, the January 20th Kiss Expo in Atlanta was the perfect opportunity to present myself or present the book as, a real thing, even though it's not finished. Putting up we had the big banners behind us, and we have this. Oh, let's see if you can see this here.
I remember that sample book. That was so fun to flip through. That was awesome.
Yeah. So, Scotty and I put this together, and, wanted people to be able to actually hold something in their hand and look through it. I mean, this is really more like a magazine because it's soft cover, but I just, imagine a hardcover book, sort of like this one. Imagine this with this cover.
Yep. About
that thick, a little thicker. This is 340 pages. Just tag another 200 on there, and you got the magic size. Same dimensions, 9 by 12, right? So same glossy, color pages all the way through, but without, no disrespect to Lynn Goldsmith, but not everything will be Lynn Goldsmith. So you might have some Neil Preston shots from, see if I can see this.
I'd love that page. Every page, it's just like a visual potpourri, a cornucopia of magic. It's sick. It's just absolutely sick.
That's really the goal. I want, I know this may sound super corny, and I'm sorry, but Kiss always said they were the band that they wanted to see. Well, this is the book that I've always wanted to see. Wishing somebody would put together all the detailed info, really research it, and have things like actual paperwork to back up your claim if possible. Not just accepting one person's information. So a lot of people, understandably, think that if the photographer says it was taken on this date, then he was there, he should know. Well, I wish it was that way. I wish it was that easy. It's just not, because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of times they didn't really keep this is the 70s, folks. These photographers were really on the go. One night, Finn Costello was taking shots, at the Spectrum in Philly, and the next night he's over in Providence taking photos, next night he's in Madison Square Garden and it's a different band and all these different things. And they just really didn't have the time to sit down and catalog everything as precisely as you might think they would. And back then, I don't think people were worried about what exact date that photo was taken on. Magazines would ask for photos that were obviously current, but they would never, you didn't see magazines saying, like a little subtitle under there saying, taken December 31st, 1975. Most of the time, they wouldn't even mention where it was from or anything. It was just a picture to go with some story,
Yep.
that they were talking about. So,
and many times concert reviews didn't even feature photos from the actual concerts. Now,
Right.
some newspapers would send out staff photographers out to cover shows, but I've seen photos from the wrong lineup for tours.
Right.
As part of those reviews. So, the date to a consumer, someone buying Circus Magazine or Cream, they didn't care what day that photo was taken. It's only people like us who are really afflicted with something that is hard to diagnose, who really care about that. And again, you take it that next step into correlating the photographic evidence with the diary, the live, the interviews, with the other life events that were going on at the time, and making sense of it from a point of view that, you're even paying attention to the costumes the guys are wearing. Or like you said earlier, the guitar that's off to the side of a stage that's just accidentally framed in a photographer's photo. That's going to a whole different level of when you can start analyzing when a guitar was painted or was repaired or modified.
That's a good point, because that's a big part of this book too, is the info part that connects with the photo is with their makeup or their costumes or the guitars, the stage equipment, props on stage, the lighting, all these different things that I feel are fascinating. I don't know. I know that there are Star Wars fans out there who are very interested in exactly how a lightsaber is constructed. I love Star Wars. Is one of my favorite things in the world. That, especially, of course, Episode 4, the first Star Wars from '77, is, in my opinion, tough to ever beat.
The one that us old people know as just Star Wars. Forget
Right.
Episode 4; that didn't exist.
Right, it was just Star Wars.
A New Hope. It was Star Wars.
Exactly. So there are Star Wars fans, that are interested enough in how that was constructed. And I remember going to Barnes and Noble and seeing a book and looking through it and going, somebody's got a blueprint of how the Millennium Falcon was put together. And that's the level of interest that some Star Wars fans have. Well, I have that level of interest for KISS. So I do want to know, when did Paul add the sequence to his Flying V in December of 1976? Which show did that actually show up in? And if you are able to find photos from all the shows from December of 1976, well, then you can figure out when it showed up, right? And then also, when did he actually finish? When did the rest of those sequences show up on that Flying V? And through finding photos from all these shows, you can figure out when that was. When did Gene add the little studs on the top part of his Lobu bass, right? That was the beginning of '77. So not just generally, but specifically, which show did that happen on? And it's the same thing for any costume variation or makeup variations. There was a time when Gene, in '74, the spikes on his cheek would go outward. Okay, and then eventually he decided to go this way. And, well, with photos, you can see exactly when that was. If you ask Gene when that happened, he would surely just laugh at such a question, like he doesn't remember. Or if he didn't laugh at it, he would say it happened in 1976, and and of course it happened way before then. So the photos are so necessary to be able to get this kind of detail. And that's a big part of what magic is providing that level of detail. The costumes and the makeup and stage equipment, whether it's a guitar, or the bloody stake thing on the Destroyer tour, whatever you want to call that thing that Gene would spit blood at.
Oh, was it that kind of orange impaling looking thing?
Yeah, I'd love to sit down with him and ask, what's the concept behind that? I can't figure that out to save my life. This little spiky little tower thing with looks like blood dripping down it. I don't really know what that represents. I could never figure that out.
It's a lava lamp from hell.
That's what I think too. It looks like a lava lamp that that doesn't have a part on the bottom, and so I'm hoping, fingers crossed, between once this Kickstarter, once this the pre-orders begin, which really is the same as crowdfunding, by the way. I mean, I'm personally accepting payment from people to fund the book. So it's really no different than the Kickstarter. The only difference is now I get to, I'm in control and I don't have to pay 5% to Kickstarter to do the thing. So that's one thing I definitely learned is like, you know what? I don't really need to pay somebody else to do this. If I establish trust online, well, maybe there'll be enough people that believe in the project and believe in me that I'm not just some shyster going to the furthest links anyone's ever gone to scam you.
How many years had you been working on it before the Kickstarter, and then add 3 to it? So that's a pretty long, grift, isn't it? So, if that were the case, but, let's talk about the point that you've reached, because obviously while we're having a wonderful chat that I could keep, talking about this sort of stuff with you for hours without pressing record, simple as that for me personally, because we've both done things in the same realm, and you've done stuff in a whole different realm that I'm personally interested in and looking forward to. But you are on this show today for a reason. You are about to be announcing, or you've already announced that it's coming, but pre-sales are going to be starting for Magic. So for everyone out there who's had that very unpleasant itch for 3 years, hoping that there was going to be a medicine release, well, there is. It's called Preparation M, and it's putting the magic back in to soothe your suffering. So
You're too much.
What is going to be happening, and what is the lay of the land for your project in the first week of July 2018?
Starting at noon on July 9th, noon Central Time. I'm here in Houston, Texas, so noon my time. The official website where you can pre-order the book will go live. Okay, we built the website and we're just waiting for that time to put the link on Facebook, and we'll put the link all over the place. It won't just be on Facebook; it'll be on the FAQ and everywhere else. I can shove it into people's faces to go to that. Click on the link, go to the website, and we've got a nice display there where you can, for those again who don't already know, they can read up on what the book is about, see sample pages. And pre-order the book, just basically the same way you would go to, any other place and click on order and, go through PayPal and pay for it that way through a credit card, either your PayPal account or a credit card that PayPal will accept, which is all the credit cards. I don't know. I guess they still make Discover cards, so they even take Discover cards, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, and Discover. So the book. There will be a deluxe edition of the book, which I definitely want to mention. The book itself is $100, just the plain book, the 550-page plus or minus, 9x12 hardcover, full glossy pages, full color all the way through. That book will be $100. The deluxe edition will have an extra book, a 100-page book specifically on Kiss Meets the Phantom. A wonderful Kiss fan named Ingo Florin, who had put out a Kiss collectibles book back in the early 2000s. He came forward about a month or so ago with a mountain of paperwork for Kiss Meets the Phantom with so much information and details, and that's when we decided, you know what? This is too good to just, to try to hurry through. So we're going to make a special book just for Kiss Meets the Phantom. And that'll be 100 pages. It won't be hardcover. It'll be more like this, but 100 pages, and specifically on Kiss Meets the Phantom. So that's part of the bonus for the deluxe edition. The other thing, we're going to have 11 9x12 book, the book size. Basically, I guess you could call them a poster or a pinup. I don't know what the line is between a poster and a pinup, but it's 9x12, and one photo from each of the years, 73 to 83. So that's actually 11 years to represent, and with using the Donruss border design idea. Not exactly the same, but just a throwback, tip of the hat to the Donruss border. And so that'll be added to it. Plus 18x24 poster that will be designed by a guy. It's an artwork poster to be designed by a guy named Steph Martinez. Hopefully, Kiss fans recognize his artwork when they think back last year. He had done a great combination of Kiss and Star Wars. He put them together. There was a great...
Darth Vader as Gene, or Gene as Darth Vader. That was sick.
That's his artwork, and yes, I agree. When I saw that, I about fell on the floor. It was like, oh my God, that is the coolest looking thing I've ever seen, right? And then he did another one for Ace as C-3PO, which looked incredible. And then he did Peter as Chewbacca, which was amazing, so clever. He made the drums like the toms were like R2-D2, and the gong in the back was like the Millennium Falcon. It was, just that's the kind of guy that you want to partner with and have do something with. So he's doing a special artwork that's going to be 18x24, so about this big, as a poster. That'll be another bonus with the deluxe edition. So you get the regular book for the deluxe edition, the extra book, 100 pages, Kiss Meets the Phantom, 11 posters or pinups, whatever you want to call them, and an extra poster, a real size poster, like an 18x24. All that comes for $150, which is a great value. The book itself truly is worth around $150. Okay, just the book by itself. A 500+ page book, hardcover, glossy, full color, $150 is not too much to ask for a book like that. However, it's only $100. So the deluxe edition is also a bargain at $150. The shipping, here's where we got to get serious, folks.
Here's where it gets painful as well.
Here's where the pain...
Because you've already said 500 pages, and you've held up Lynn's book, and Lynn's book is heavy. How are you going to handle that? It's
just, I don't know how to, I won't try to sugarcoat it or make it anything other than it is. It's expensive to ship overseas. $69 is the flat rate cost for shipping of a book this size and weight, to just one single book, to UK. Okay, it's $69. I've got to charge $75 because I've got to. The box it comes in from, the flat rate box that I get from the post office is free, but the packing materials are not free. And then I'm actually going to be the one shipping this. I don't have a company that does this. I'll be the one boxing up all these these things and shipping them out personally.
That's why it's called shipping and handling rather than postage.
Yeah. So so it's going to be $75 for one book. The good news is, if you put a second book in there, it's also $69. It's the same price because it's up to 20 pounds, and there's the box they have is big enough to fit two books. So if somebody knows a friend who is interested in this and they go in together, well, they've cut their shipping cost in half right there. Hopefully somebody may show up and serve as a distributor that I could ship a bulk, big bunch of books, and then they ship them out from the UK or Australia or wherever. At the current time, nobody's stepped forward to do that yet, so I don't know if anybody will or when they will. But other than that, I don't know of any other things to do to convince the post office to lower their prices.
Somehow, I don't think they're going to do that for you, for me, for anyone, because of their liability that they have to fund every year. And U.S. postal fees are just going up and up and up. It's the same. I buy things from Australia. You know what? Their postal rates suck too. I get stuff from Canada. Their rates stink too. It's just something, no matter where you are, even in Europe, I know the Royal Mail is not cheap either. Unless it's subsidized, there's no way to do it. And you know what? As a creator, you're not going to subsidize it to make it cheap for someone else, because why should you be paying out of your pocket? You've already put your effort into your blood, sweat, and tears into a project. There's no way to assuage that pain. So people are going to have to decide for themselves when they see the website, when they see samples, when they see all of the magic that, if they weren't in Atlanta and didn't get to flip through your sample book, I certainly hope that there are plenty of sample pages for people to see on the website for them to be able to judge. Is this something that I want to pay this extra amount? Because that is simply the surcharge for doing business. You're not going to get it any other way. Anyone who sells it on eBay from there will have paid postage, and they're going to be wanting to get that money back. If anyone does manage to buy 2 copies, they're going to want to make money back. So you're still going to be paying no matter what. There's going to be no way around it. What would be a concern, and I think a question that many people do want to ask you, is this is not Kickstarter, where if you say you need $100,000 to pay for the photographic licensing, and as you know from 2015, you didn't make, even though you did very well. What is going to be the difference now in all of this money being directly available to you means that you're able to make deals and finalize stuff with photographers. You're able to make deals and finalize stuff with printers. You're able to bring it very much more forward than you're able to with a Kickstarter. But people have paid, and they don't have to a certain extent, I don't want to use the term protection, but the coverage of a Kickstarter means that if you don't make your goal, their credit cards don't get charged. This is a pre-order. This is a very different beast, and people are going to be having their credit cards charged. So can you address some of that risk factor and how you're going to be able to take this project into reality and have a physically deliverable product for the people who have entrusted you with their money?
Great. Yes. The first thing I want to say on that subject is, if at any point the person who sends me their money to pre-order this book, if at some point they decide they want a refund, I am happy to refund the money. They don't have to explain it. There's no conditions. They will get their money back. Okay, so if by November you decide, you know what, I've changed my mind and I don't want this book after all, or I don't trust it, I don't think it's gonna become a reality, so I want my money back. By all means, it'll come right back to you, full refund. Any money you sent to me will come back to you the same amount and be refunded back to your credit card or your PayPal account. So that's all I can ask is that, people trust that, again, this is not some super elaborate, ridiculous scam that I've invested 4 years in. So this is the only way to do this, to where I actually have control over what happens to the money, and that I don't have to pay more money to have, somebody else control it. So I think I've developed a certain level of trust among KISS fans on Facebook over the years, and on the FAQ maybe as well, where I've been there pretty much every single day. I've updated the Magic Facebook page, I think every single week for the last 3+ years. I've spent my own time helping other people when they would present a photo and they wanted to know when that was taken, when and where. I would take time out and help them. And I felt that was a wise use of my time, again, to develop some kind of trust and a relationship with people that I've actually never, ever met in person. Same thing when we were talking about the photographers. Somebody has to reach out and make an effort to establish a level of trust. And if you are sincere and you are not flighty, where disappear for a month, like what happened to that guy? I thought he was going to do this, and now he's gone. Well, I've been there every day for the last 3 years, plus more than 3 years. So hopefully that level of trust will be strong enough so that people will say, okay, this book looks like a book I want to get. Everything that he's shown, all the sample pages look incredible. I love the info. I love the photos. I love the layout. I believe this guy is going to do what he says he's going to do. And I understand that in order to make it happen, I have to step forward and send the money that I would pay for this. And then he turns around, once enough money has been collected, just like you described, make deals with photographers, actually be able to pay them. Right now I have loads of agreements. Nothing's been paid yet, but I have agreements, actual paperwork, actually legal documents with photographers saying, I can use these photos, here's the cost, and then once the funds have been raised, I will pay them and, either, get the full res versions. A lot of times the photos that I would have from them will be watermarked versions or lower res, but good enough size that I can make a design out of and make a choice of which photo to use. So once I pay them, then I'll get the full res version and we'll plop that into the book, no problem. So all that happens once the money is there. So there's a trust factor. The money has to come in, and then it becomes a reality. So that's kind of the process by which I think that now is the time to make that happen. I could wait, keep digging and finding stuff for another 3 years. And at some point, people would go, okay, this guy's full of shit. This is ridiculous. I think some people are already at that point, or maybe have been after the first year. To kind of put in perspective, good things take a while to make, and I don't want to make anything less than the best. And after that Kickstarter campaign 3 years ago, I felt that this was worthy of putting some patience into and some more dedication and time and making it even more magical. So this is where I'm at now, and I hope that people trust it and will step forward and pre-order the book.
Well, you preemptively answered what was going to be my first question. My first follow-up in this interrogation was going to be, do you have agreements in place for these photographs? I mean, just to maybe expand on that slightly, do you have every photographer basically covered by prospective agreements and dollar amount at this point? Do you have every photograph that you want to include in the book linked with the appropriate photographer? And know to a certain extent that this is the book, that it's got X amount of photos, and from whom each one of them is from, and the licensing that you have to pay for each of those photographers. I mean, do you essentially have those details at this point? There's obviously going to be some wiggle room on a project of this scope. Right. There's always going to be, if I was to ask you, what's the page count? Is 505, 510, 515? You could probably guesstimate what it will be, but you just know something's going to change, and there may be plus or minus at this point.
Right. Exactly. So again, another great question. I would say I probably have about 80% of the agreements in place for what I want to use. There are, again, as we mentioned earlier, there are photographers who, until there is money, there's nothing. You're not serious until you actually have money. So until there's money, I won't be able to reach into their archives to find what they have and add stuff. So, for example, not that Bob Gruen is necessarily one of those photographers I just described, but I will be planning a trip with money in hand to go to New York and look through Bob Gruen's archives. Okay. He's probably, along with Waring Abbott, he is the one photographer who was there for the most events from, before their first album came out. He was there during rehearsals, and he was there the last time he photographed them was at the beginning of the Dynasty tour. So he was there for a lot of stuff. And I know there's the majority of the stuff that he has never been seen, even though obviously a lot has been seen. So I want to go like I did with Neil Preston and like I did with Ray Ann Rubenstein. I want to actually visit their office and look in their archives myself with money and make an agreement with him, because he doesn't have time to show me everything that he has. He just doesn't. He's not going to take the time to do that, to just, digitize everything that he has. So I have to make that happen. But the vast majority of the photos that are going to be in the book have already been, the arrangements are already in place with the photographers. Absolutely.
What about text? Is the majority of your text written for the book at this point?
Not written yet, but organized, meaning the details are there. What needs to be said, what needs to be covered is already in line, I guess you could say. But the time it takes me to do, say, for example, a month's worth of text and information, especially because of the way that this book is, I'm not trying to have any kind of flowery. I don't need to convince anybody on my vocabulary or my necessarily writing skills. The writing of this is really fairly dry because it's just the facts, ma'am.
It's not a narrative. It's not a biography on the band. Your text is only supporting images, where the image should be worth 1,000 words, and you only need to use 20 to set its context.
Yeah. So what they did, if they were in a photo session, then the date of the photo session, the location, the photographer, and then details about the costuming. So there's one spread I think this is a good example for anybody wondering, how it works. There's a spread about the Pauline the Pauline Halloween special, and there is a certain spread where it shows the details in the costuming. Okay. And there are small pictures like Peter's. That was the first time Peter wore a certain boot with the cat face on the top. Gene wore some jewelry that he didn't wear otherwise, details like that. So all that text is just, I don't have to write about the significance of that cat face, or that it meant a lot to his grandmother or it's just none of that has anything to do with it. It's just, this is what happened, and here's a picture of what it is. I'm not going into why he chose to do that. I'm not speculating. It's none of that information is in the scope of this book. It's just facts, just details. There will be interviews with people who were there, some of the time, but again, that's already been written. I don't have to rewrite what they said. I'm just going to quote what they said. So I don't have to come up with a lot of fancy ways to explain why Kiss was magic. All you have to do is just be there.
Just look at the damn pictures, people. Come on.
Yeah. So
pick a page and open it up. That's why they were magic. It's right. It's in the book that he's putting out. The answer to that question.
That's kind of the way I approach this, and not to disparage anyone who writes with uses a lot of alliteration. The metal magic mayhem. I don't know. I don't need to do any of that stuff. Luckily for this book, I can just say this is what happened, and this is where it was, and when it was, and who was there, and here's a photo of it.
What was that guy's name in Dragnet? Was that Joe Monday? Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, whatever his name was.
That's what this book is. So even though I haven't typed up all the text, it just flows really fast for me. It's just and I actually know how to type. So just in case anybody's wondering, I don't have to two-finger. I'm a very fast typer. So we're going to spend the rest of this year, we meaning Scott and myself, completing all the spreads, getting all the entire page, the entire book finished, so that by the end of the year, assuming that all the pre-orders are there to fund everything, which, I don't know how it's going to go. It took a month to get $46,000 3 years ago, and that was when I only had 4,000 followers on the Facebook page. We have 14,000 followers now. Now I don't know what the algorithm is that to figure out. Oh, you have this many followers, where only this percentage really care. You know what I mean? I don't know what that is, but if only seriously, if only 10% of 14,000 people pull the trigger and buy this, we're golden.
That's a very small number to need to bring on board when you think about the scope of what you're trying to do. And you preempted me again. What was going to be my next question was anticipated timeline. Or we're obviously on the same page, so that's cool. You've said the rest of the year you're hoping is going to be that you focus on putting things together. The money comes in that you need in order to start finalizing this. As money comes in, are you going to start making deals and cutting checks, in other words, or are you going to wait until you've got lump sum in order to get it all done in one work? Are you going to do a mailing list for people who purchase? You're going to have their emails and give them newsletters on a weekly basis if they opt in, and maybe teasers that otherwise the plebs get on Facebook, because that's advertising in essence. But for the people who've cashed in and put their money where their mouths, or those of us who have mouths, because a lot of people are just consumers and not mouthy critics, with nothing better to do than to pick holes in people's dreams, to basically take,
I love you, Julian. You say the best things, man. I swear.
Well, it's selfish here, because I'm going to order, and I wouldn't have you on the show unless I was personally interested anyway, and. What I look forward to, and I'm hoping that there are teasers, just like the stuff that you've put online, except it's not going to be online, because there are enough teasers there that if I plunk down my money, maybe weekly or monthly or whatever, I get a nice email from Ross on a Friday that says, "Hey, supporter, thank you so much for your support. Here's a little taste of magic," stuff like that. And, so run through the timeline, run through how you hope to, manage your customers' expectations, because it's going to be a wait, and people need to know that going in. It's not going to be this year that they receive a package from you.
Right. That's exactly right.
There's going to have to be a certain amount of faith, which is sometimes a hard thing to sell when it comes to KISS-related products.
That's right. So going back to what I said earlier about establishing trust, and people being patient enough to wait this long. Yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take for the pre-orders to come in. I originally needed $100,000 to do the book that I want to do. Now that we're doing a deluxe edition, the printing costs have gone up for that. If you're going to print another 100-page book, the printing costs go up, and the posters and stuff also, plus the cost of the photos for that 100-page book. All the costs go up. So I'm looking at around $125,000 to get this book done right. But I don't want to spend anyone's money on anything until that amount has come in. So the kind of transparency that I've exhibited thus far will continue, where I'm online and I respond as fast as I can to any messages that are sent to me. I think I have a really quick response rate and a thorough response rate, because I don't let anything slide if I can possibly help it. And being professional enough with people, being courteous with them, and just establishing, again, sort of a relationship with all these different people. And so that trust and faith will have to be there until the money comes in. And once the money comes in, then I can, like I said, I can make a trip for one weekend to go visit Bob Gruen and pick from his collection, okay? And make final deals with the money actually in place already. And that'll tie that up. While that's all going, Scotty and I will still be finishing out the book. And our goal is to get it finished by the end of this year, so that if the money is there and we finish by the end of the year, we should be able to, and all the photos are paid for, the printer's paid for. We should be able to send the files to the printer by the end of the year. And within a couple of months is what I've been told it takes to get a book like this printed. So by, beginning of March, be able to actually have the physical books in my hand. Thanks again, Lynn, for
That's free, that's totally free advertising, Lynn. You don't need to send a check. It's okay.
Yeah, I love Lynn.
It's a great book, though. It's a really nice thing on to have on the coffee table. Love the puffy cover.
Oh, hang on, just not to go off on a tangent, but speaking of Lynn, I'll show you something kind of cool. This is the. Let's see if I can get this in here where you can see it. Okay.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
This was a little cardboard, display in Nashville in October of last year when she did an in-store signing there. And it's one of those situations where if you don't ask, it's like asking you shall receive. This was sitting on the front counter. And as soon as I walked in, I said, "May I speak to the manager?" And and this lady was super nice. And I said, if no one, has already claimed this, can I put my name in for it? Because I'd really love to have it. And I explained to her that I actually helped out with the book. I helped Lynn kind of organize her photos. Again, she wasn't sure where certain photos were taken from, whether they were Madison Square Garden in '79 or the Palladium in '80. That's one example. So anyway, this is one of my favorite little things to have here.
Damn it! And she's one of the more organized photographers that I know of.
Yeah, she is. She's definitely got her stuff. But even her, it's just the reality of it. And she would admit it if you asked her about it. She thinks certain things happened at a certain time, and then when you present her with the actual reality of the timeline, turns out it's different. So that's just the way it is. But she's wonderful, and I loved helping her out with that book a little bit, and she gave me a nice thank you in the book and all that stuff. So that was very sweet of her. All right, so let me see if I can get back to where I was. Oh, Lordy, I done forgot what we were talking about.
We were right at the point where if you've raised the money by the end of the year and you've submitted the files to the printer, that the anticipated printing time is a couple of months for a book of this scope, especially when you're talking about heavy gloss printing. Are you printing in the U.S.? Or are you going to Korea for like the KissFAQ Get High print quality? Do you remember KissFAQ? When you open that thing up and you're like, holy fumes, toxic. I think that was that one was printed in Asia somewhere. So
yeah, to be honest with you, the Star Print Broker is the printer that I'm going with right now. Actually, I'm looking around. I got Kurt Gooch was nice enough to refer me to somebody else that he thinks does a great job for even less. So I reached out to them. But so I'm not sure where it's going to be printed, to be honest, yet. But I got quotes from the Star Print Broker, and so, back when I was doing the Kickstarter, I got quotes from 3 other printers who basically their quotes were the same or more. They weren't cheaper. And Ken Sharp had suggested Star Print Broker, and their representative was really nice and attentive, and so I went with them.
Right, so here we are then. Monday is just a few short days away. Your website is going to be live. You've raised a couple of interesting questions, for people to consider out there, because I know there are people who will be watching this who do work in print industry in other countries. So you're receptive to people getting in touch with you with questions, with ideas. It's not all going to be about what we've been talking about today, that this is an open dialogue in some ways for people who can reach out to you if they've got real suggestions, not fantasy ones, everyone. It really is, if you do work in the industry and have something that you could tell Ross, he's more than likely to be receptive to your email or to your Facebook comment or friend request. So here we are. It's Thursday. Your website is going to go live on Monday. Give us the final wrap, Ross. go to the website. We're going to post this up likely on Sunday, just to be 1 day in advance of what is known as M Day. It is magic. It is the day that is going to lead to the magic happening. It is the day that hopefully you've been waiting for. If you've been enjoying Ross's contributions on Facebook and his corrections when people post photos incorrectly on the KissFAQ, I get my timer, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You do arrive. You're very punctual. Thank you so much. And you do let people know the error of their ways in the nicest terms, unless they're stubborn, in which case you are very firm, but nicely firm. It's like the school teacher who reminds you that your behavior is unacceptable, Mr. Gill. Don't be wrong about that photo again. That was clearly March the 15th, 1975, not March the 17th. Yeah. No, to be serious,
That's okay.
Monday is Magic Day.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to be able to put their money where their mouth is, to get behind you, or not, as the case is, because obviously it's a lot of money. So lead us out, Ross, with your 5-second sale bite that is going to make people want to drop that coin.
Please buy my book. All right. It comes down to faith and trust. You just hopefully, if you followed it at all, you know that I'm serious about this and have put a lot of effort into it and have been transparent. And if you like what you see when you look through and want to see 500 plus pages of stuff like this, and and read stuff and learn things that you don't already know, see photos that you haven't already seen, then this is the book for you. And there's a lot of KISS fans that I think have been waiting for this kind of thing. I don't know if there are going to be enough KISS fans, but there's only one way to find out. So Monday, when it goes live, step up and be counted, and we can make magic happen together.
That sounds awkward, but we will leave that there. Considering the demographic of KISS fans at this stage is mostly aging males, balding aging males. But there we go. So Ross Radley and your partner in crime, of course, Scott. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited that this is going to happen, and I hope that in 2018 everything works out positively for you, and that the excitement builds and people get on board, and at the end of the year we get that email saying all systems go. That's probably not the best parallel to use, but in a positive sense, that we get that email saying the files have been sent to the printers. I can't wait to see that email, to read that email, and then to know that something is coming. So Ross Radley, for your time today, the KissFAQ podcast thanks you, and we'll probably be seeing you again. I'm looking forward to that next one.
Anytime. Thank you, Julian. You're amazing, wonderful host, and I really salute you for all you do. Thanks for having me.
I'm a pompous ass. I always will be. Thank you, Ross.
You're welcome.
Please visit Magic, KISS Chronicles 1973 to 1983 on Facebook for ordering information on Monday, July the 9th. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.